What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Full 90. It is time for week 14 of the Premier League predictions. Now, it is a mid-week video, so I'm actually having to record this before the previous game week games are played because I won't have time to get this video up for you otherwise. So here's just a quick look at the winning accumulators we've had on the Patreon since the last week of videos. You can pause the video if you want to take a look, but you can just scroll through if you want. Flashing up on the screen are all of the people that are supporting me over on the Patreon. We're getting into a very busy period of football. I always said this, you know, if there's ever a time you want to get involved in football and predictions and the Patreon, then December is the month to do that because it's the month with the most fixtures, the most value, and the most exciting time. So if you want to get a shout out in every single video like the people you just saw on your screen, and you want to get exclusive access to the members tips and accumulators as well as the group chat, then be sure to click that link using the description down below. And if you want to gift someone a membership over on Patreon, you can do that as well. Just go to patreon.com/thefull90 and then do /gift, and you can do it that way. Kicking off, we have Ipswich up against Crystal Palace. Now, I'm finding this one very difficult to actually call. If we look at the previous game week, I predicted that Crystal Palace will just miss out to Newcastle and Ipswich would lose to Nottingham Forest. Again, one of the great things, I think, as a viewer, you can watch this video with the hindsight of the previous game week that I don't have. So you knew what happened on week 13. I'm going to say what I predicted very briefly on the previous game week for each team, and then you'll be able to laugh at me when I get it wrong and applaud me when I get it right, of course. So I do think maybe Palace could get something from Newcastle, but I said in the video Newcastle just shade it. So for this one, both teams will want to bounce back and try and get something, and I think Ipswich, being the home team, will be in the best position to do that, and they are slight underdogs in this fixture as far as the odds are concerned. I'm struggling to separate them. Ipswich have had a lot of draws this season, so I'm going to do that. Ipswich 1, Crystal Palace 1, and the tip is going to be both teams to score at 1.7. After this, it is Leicester up against West Ham. I predicted that Leicester would just lose to Brentford in a high-scoring game in the previous game week, and West Ham would lose to Arsenal in a high-scoring game in the previous game week. So much like Ipswich and Palace, I think both teams here will be looking to bounce back, and I'm actually going to shade this to West Ham. I initially thought maybe a 2-2 draw. I then thought Leicester could definitely win this because you never know which West Ham is going to turn up. I find it easier to predict Leicester games than I do West Ham games, but I think something about that recent Newcastle result where West Ham won 2-0, I could see them getting something here. So I'm not gonna sit on the fence either. I'm gonna be brave and pick a 2-1 West Ham win. But my tip, I'm gonna combine two markets here for above evens, West Ham double chance, and both teams to score at 2.15. That allows for the very likely 1-1 draw that I've decided not to pick here, or the 2-2 draw that I initially thought of. I don't think I see Leicester winning. I think West Ham are a better team. Leicester, you think they should win. At home against West Ham, they should win, but I just don't see it. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to the Hammers. Now, after this is Everton up against Wolves. I predicted Everton would lose 1-0 to Man United. Is that going to be funny for you to hear? I hope so. It'd be hilarious if it is. And I predicted that Wolves would actually beat Bournemouth at home. And this is, again, a really difficult one to predict. I thought about going both teams to score because both teams to score always seems to happen in Wolves games, but it seldom happens in Everton games. And if Man United do win 2-0, then that would be 4 games in a row in the Premier League where Everton haven't scored a goal, losing 1-0 to Southampton, 1-0 to Man United if that happens, and 2 0-0 draws in the middle. The only reason I'm not going a 0-0 draw in this game is because I really think Wolves games just have a lot of goals. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. But just in case it does end 0-0, instead of going both teams to score, I'm actually going to tip draw at 3.3. Now, after this, it's Manchester City up against Nottingham Forest. In the previous game week, I actually said City would draw 2-2 with Liverpool. I think Liverpool should win, and let's be honest, they probably did win. But it's so hard to go against Man City, especially when if they're ever going to raise their game, it's going to be at Anfield. And it's just, I can't see them being winless in 7. I know the previous 6 shouldn't have an effect on this, and this is the game they have the most likelihood of losing out of all of the games they lost. And they probably did lose to Liverpool, but I think they are going to bounce back here. I predicted that Forest would beat Ipswich, and I could even see that being a bit of a banana skin for them. But I think this is going to be a straightforward, we need to win, because I don't see City winning at Liverpool, right? So that means they'd be winless in 7 going into this. They have to win. And Forest, they're the only team to beat Liverpool this season away from home. So they could do it again, but I'm just going to go with my head here and say Man City to win 2-0. But I'm going to tip Man City to win and under 4.5 goals at 1.66. Man City win is 1.3. I thought about Man City to win and under 3.5 goals at 2.15, but you never know. So I'll just say 2-0 and keep it simple and move on. Now, afterwards, it's Newcastle up against Liverpool. As I said, I predicted that Newcastle would just get something from Crystal Palace in the previous game week and Liverpool drawing with Man City, but I think they probably should win. Again, my gut wants me to say that Liverpool won't win this game, but I really can't go against them. So I'm going to say that Liverpool get a close win away at St. James's Park. Liverpool to win 2-1. And the odds, Liverpool to win at 1.9. I can understand why they are the way that they are, because I think it is quite likely that they drop points here. I really do. I think it's weirdly more likely that they drop points here than they do against Man City at Anfield. So I'm going to say 2-1 Liverpool, and Liverpool to win at 1.9 is the tip. But I could see this being a weird little 1-1 draw or even a Newcastle win, and that's just a pure gut feeling. But moving on to a game that I feel like I've got a much better hold on, it is Southampton up against Chelsea. Last week, I predicted that Southampton would lose against Brighton 3-1, and I predicted that Chelsea would beat Aston Villa 2-1. So I think Southampton coming off of a loss, Chelsea coming off of a win. Whether both teams score in those games, I'm not certain, of course, but I think Chelsea win and Southampton lose, and I'm going to translate to that to this game. Southampton, I think they can score at St. Mary's. They did it twice against Liverpool, but I think Chelsea are going to win. I'm going to say Chelsea to win 3-1. And the tip is Chelsea to win at 1.53. You could look at Chelsea and both teams to score at 2.87, but am I that confident in Southampton scoring? I'm not so sure. So we're just going to say Chelsea to win at 1.53. Now, after this, it's Arsenal up against Manchester United. As I said, I'm predicting United to beat Everton 1-0, and I'm predicting Arsenal to beat West Ham 3-1 in the previous game week. Hopefully, there were no slip-ups there, because as I said in last week's video, that Arsenal game at West Ham in December was one of the worst Arsenal performances I've ever seen. But I do think Arsenal are going to win this one. I know Man United, they managed to beat Bodo Glimt 3-2 last night in the Europa League, but I just don't see it happening against Arsenal here. I think Arsenal are going to win. It's at home as well. I'm going to say 2-1. The odds of Arsenal to win are 1.48. That's going to be my tip. It's really not great, but this is the most confident I've been in Arsenal beating Man United in a while. I think they will win. You could go both teams to score, but Man United, you just never know. It's a really difficult one, and Arsenal, they should not drop points here. I think a couple of years ago when Arsenal was sort of on the ascendancy and United were falling down the table and they sort of met in the middle, Arsenal-Man United was a tricky game because you think Man United should get something, but now Arsenal, they simply are just a better team, and they absolutely should win this one. So I'm going to say 2-1 and Arsenal to win as the tip. After this, it's Aston Villa up against Brentford. Aston Villa can't buy a win. In the previous game week, I said they lost to Chelsea, and Brentford, I said they beat Leicester, but Villa haven't won, I think, since October. And obviously now you're watching this, it's December. And I think they're going to have to use Brentford's woeful away form to get a win. Brentford are one of the worst travelling teams in the league. I think they are the worst, along with Southampton. They don't get any points. And I think Villa need to use this to get a win. So I'm going to say Villa to win 2-1. But I am not tipping that in any way. My tip is going to be in the goals market. It's Brentford, it's Villa. Villa obviously just recently drew 2-2 to Palace. I'm going to say both teams to score on over 2.5 goals at 1.9. That is an absolute belter of a tip, and it's much more likely than a Villa win in my opinion. Now after this, it is Fulham up against Brighton. As I said, I predicted Brighton to beat Southampton in a high-scoring game, and Fulham, I've predicted that they will lose to Tottenham on the road, but they're back at Craven Cottage. I think we're going to see goals in this one. It's difficult to separate the two teams. I'm going to say that this ends in a 2-2 draw, and the tip is going to be both teams to score and over 2.5 goals at 1.83. And the final game is Bournemouth up against Tottenham. How the heck do you predict this one? I've predicted that Bournemouth will lose to Wolves and Tottenham will beat Fulham in the previous game week, but Bournemouth might beat Wolves and Tottenham might lose to Fulham. These are some of the most tricky teams to predict this season in the Premier League. And obviously Bournemouth at home, they beat Arsenal and Man City, but in back-to-back games, they've lost to Brentford and Brighton, and they might lose to Wolves as well. So you never know. I genuinely stay away from this one. This is just a pure gut feeling. I'm going to say 1-0 to Tottenham. The tip is going to be under 3.5 goals at 1.8. I think the value is pretty good because something just tells me it's a game that should have a lot of goals, right? There should be both teams to score an over. But I just think it's going to be under 3.5 goals. It's just a vibe. So I'm going to say 1-0 to Tottenham. This could genuinely end 3-3. I don't know how to call this, so I'm going to say low scoring and say they cancel each other out for the most part. And just like Tottenham 1-0 away against Man City and Man United, I'll say that they win 2-0 away against Bournemouth, just randomly, in just true Spursy fashion. So that is going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy it, please do drop a like, subscribe so you don't miss a video. Remember, if we get 30,000 subscribers before the end of this month, I will be introducing La Liga, Serie A and Bundesliga prediction videos to the channel, at least for this season. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.